One of Amara's friends, Sophia, said, "She's probably one of those teachers' pets, the type who never breaks a rule." Amara chuckled. "Exactly, and you know how much I love breaking them." The bell rang sharply, reverberating through the halls of Wills High School, signaling the end of lunch break. The corridors were aligned with the noise of hurried footsteps, bursts of laughter, and snippets of conversation. Among the throng of students was a new face, quiet, reserved, and distinctly out of place. Her name was Miriam, and today was the first day at Wills High School. She moved cautiously, holding her books tightly to her chest, as if they were a shield. Her uniform was immaculate, her shoes polished to a shine, and her posture upright, suggesting she came from a background that valued discipline. Yet, her lowered gaze and hesitant steps betrayed her discomfort in this unfamiliar environment. She felt the weight of eyes on her, the curiosity and judgment prickling her skin like tiny needles. As Miriam navigated the corridor of highways, her presence caught the attention of a group of girls huddled near the lockers. At the center of the group was Amara, the undisputed queen bee of Wills High School. With her flawless hair, perfectly tailored uniform, and an air of authority that demanded attention, Amara was a force to be reckoned with. She ruled the school with a mix of charm and cruelty, and her friends followed her lead like moths to a flame. "Hey, check her out," Amara said, her voice dripping with condescension as her sharp eyes locked onto Miriam. Her tone was slow enough to seem subtle, but loud enough for our group to hear. The other girls turned to look, their eyes narrowing as they took in Miriam's appearance. Her neatly braided hair, simple backpack, and polished manuals stood out starkly against the casual confidence of Wills High School crowd. "She looks like she walked straight out of time capsule," Amara quipped, smirking as she leaned against the locker. "What is this? A 90s sitcom audition?" The group burst into laughter, their voices echoing down the hallway. Miriam glanced up briefly, her face flushing as she realized she was the subject of their amusement. She quickly averted her gaze and quickened her pace, her grip on her books tightening. Amara watched her go, her smirk deepening. "Oh, this is going to be fun," she said, a wicked glint in her eyes. "Let's see how long Little Miss Perfect lasts here." One of Amara's friends, Sophia, chimed in. "She's probably one of those teachers' pets, the type who never breaks a rule." Amara chuckled. "Exactly, and you know how much I love breaking them." The group exchanged knowing looks, already scheming their next move. For Amara, Miriam's quiet vulnerability was the blood in the water, and she was a shark cycling her prey. As Miriam turned a corner, she let out a shaky breath, her heart pounding in her chest. She could still hear the faint echoes of laughter behind her, and she felt a lump form in her throat. She had hoped for a fresh start at Wills High School, but it seemed her first day was off to a rough start. Little did anyone know, beneath Miriam's timid exterior was a resilience forged through years of challenges. Though she felt small and out of place now, she wasn't one to back down easily. And while Amara might have seen her as an easy target, she would soon learn that Miriam was far more than she appeared. For now, Miriam focused on finding her next class, determined to get through the day unscarred. By the time Miriam reached her classroom, whispers about the new girl had already spread like wildfire through the halls of Wills High School. The students had taken note of her quiet demeanor, pristine uniform, and polished shoes, and their curiosity quickly turned to speculation. As she walked into the classroom, heads turned and murmurs filled the room like an undercurrent of judgment. Miriam made her way to the back of the classroom, hoping to slip into a seat unnoticed. She kept her eyes down, trying to avoid drawing any more attention. She had learned from experience that it was better to blend into the background than to stand out on the face there. But unfortunately for her, someone had other plans. Amara, sitting near the front of the classroom with a group of friends, Amara was the kind of girl who commanded attention without even trying. Her perfectly styled hair, confident posture, and sharp eyes made her impossible to ignore. She thrived on being the center of attention and loved having control over the social dynamics of Wales High School. As teacher entered and called the class to order, Miriam felt a small wave of relief. Maybe the focus will shift away from her now. Class, we have a new student joining us today, the teacher announced, gesturing towards Miriam. This is Miriam. She's just transferred here, so let's make her feel welcome. Miriam stood awkwardly for a moment as the teacher's word hung in the air. She murmured a soft hello and quickly sat down, wishing she could disappear. Amara raised her hand, a saccharine smile spreading through her face. Welcome, Miriam, she said in a tone that dripped with exaggerated sweetness. Where are you from? A convent or something? The room erupted into laughter. Miriam felt her face grow hot as she grabbed her desk tightly. She looked up briefly to see Amara leaning back on her chair, her smile widening at the reaction she had elicited. I'm from Woodville, Miriam replied quietly, her voice barely audible over the laughter. Woodville? Amara repeated, raising an eyebrow as if the name itself was a joke. Is that even a real place? Her friends laughed again, a ripple of mockery spreading through the room. Miriam bit her lips and focused on the desk in front of her, her cheeks burning. She clenched her fist under the table, willing herself not to cry. She had been new before, but Wales High School was proving to be a particularly hostile place. As the teacher began the lesson, Miriam kept her head down, hoping the attention would shift away from her, but she could feel the occasional glance from Amara and her friends, each one like a sharp jab, reminding her she was the target. In that moment, Miriam promised herself she wouldn't let them see her break. She had endured tough situations before, and she could endure this too. She just needed to make it through the day. Little did she know this was only the beginning of Amara's plans. But what Amara didn't realize was that Miriam wasn't as fragile as she seemed, and the queen bee of Wales High School was about to meet her match. Unbeknown to the students of Wales High School, Miriam had a unique connection to the school that no one could have guessed. Her father, Mr. Ukwa, was the principal. It was a decision they had made together not to reveal her identity as the principal's daughter. Mr. Ukwa wanted Miriam to have a normal high school experience, free from expectations and scrutiny that came with her lineage. Miriam, eager to prove she could navigate a new environment on her own, had agreed. But her first day at Wales High School had been far from normal. During lunch, while the bustling cafeteria hummed with noise, Mr. Okwa sat in his quiet office, immersed in reviewing reports and emails. The light tapping of a knock broke his concentration. He looked up to see Mrs. Carter, the school counselor, standing at the doorway. Come in, Mrs. Carter, he said, setting aside the papers. Mrs. Carter walked in, her expression thoughtful. She held a notebook in her hand, and her tone was gentle but concerned. Mr. Ukwa, I wanted to talk to you about Miriam. Hearing his daughter's name, Mr. Ukwa strengthened slightly on his chair. What about her? He asked his son, even though a flicker of concern passed through his eyes. She is a bright girl, no doubt about that, Mrs. Carter began, taking a seat across from him. But I've noticed she's been very quiet in class, almost withdrawn. It's not uncommon for new students to take time adjusting, but she hesitated, choosing her words carefully. I've also noticed some of the other students seem to be targeting her. Targeting her? In what way? Mrs. Carter sighed. It softens, but it's there. Whispers, laughter at her expense, and I've seen her sitting alone during breaks. It's nothing awfully hostile yet, but I wanted to bring it to your attention before it escalates. Mr. Chima leaned back in his chair, his fingers steeped under his chin. He has hoped Miriam's anonymity would shield her from the pressures and expectation of being his daughter, but it seemed it had only exposed her to a different kind of challenge. Thank you for bringing this to me, he said after a moment. I'll keep an eye on her. If you notice anything further, let me know immediately. Mrs. Carter nodded, her expression softening. I will. She seems like a resilient young lady, but no one should have to face this alone. As she left the office, Mr. Chima sat in silence for a moment. These thoughts heavy. He trusted Miriam's strength, but the idea of her facing unkindness in his own school knocked at him. He resolved to finding a way to support her without revealing their connection. In the back of his mind, he wondered if Amara, the student known for her sharp wit and cutting remarks, had anything to do with it. Amara was clever, but her sense of humor often came at others' expense. If she was involved, Mr. Chima knew he would need to handle the situation delicately. For now, he decided to give Miriam space to navigate her own challenges, but he made a mental note to observe her more closely. After all, she might not know it, but she wasn't entirely alone. Amara and her friends didn't stop at mocking Miriam in the class. Over the next few days at Wills High School, her taunts escalated into deliberate acts of cruelty. It wasn't enough for Amara to humiliate Miriam publicly. She seemed determined to break her spirit entirely. It started with small pranks, Amara accidentally knocking over Miriam's books in the hallway or loudly commenting on her appearance within earshot of others, but soon it became more calculated. One morning, Miriam walked into class to find her desk drenched in orange juice. The sticky liquid had soaked through her notes and textbook, rendering them unreadable. Her heart sank as she tried to salvage what she could, the sound of muffled jingles for Amara's group echoing behind her. Oops, Amara said, feigning innocence. Guess someone should have been more careful. Miriam didn't respond. She cleaned up the mess in silence, her hands shaking with frustration. The next day, Miriam's backpack mysteriously disappeared during lunch. She searched the cafeteria, her locker, and even asked the janitor if he had seen it, but it was nowhere to be found. Hours later, she discovered it stuffed in the trash can behind the gym. Her books were damp, her pencils snapped, and her lunch crushed. Amara and her friends watched from a distance, their laughter barely concealed. What's wrong, Miriam? Amara called out, her tone scrumpy sweet. Lose something? Miriam gritted her teeth, swallowing the lump in her throat. She refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her crying. The rumors started soon after. Whispers about Miriam being weird and antisocial spread like wildfire. By the end of the week, she felt as though the entire school had turned against her. Students who had been polite to her on her first day now avoided her, all because they believed the lies. One afternoon during gym class, the tension reached its breaking point. The locker room was buzzing with activity as the girls changed into their uniform. Miriam had chosen a corner spot, hoping to avoid attention, but Amara had been watching, waiting for the perfect moment. As the others filtered out of the gym, Amara approached Miriam, her friends close behind her. She leaned against the locker with a smirk, blocking Miriam's escape. "Hey, new girl," Amara sneered, her voice low and menacing. "Why don't you just go back to wherever you came from? You don't belong here." Miriam froze, her hands clutching to the zipper of her bag. She could feel her pulse quickening, the familiar stink of humiliation rising in her chest. "I just want to be left alone," she muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ah, poor baby," Amara mocked, her tone dripping with fake sympathy. She clasped her hands together, mimicking a sob. "Maybe you should cry to your mommy." "Oh, wait, you probably don't even have one, do you?" The comment hit a nerve. Miriam's hands trembled as she finished stuffing her belongings into her bag. She didn't look up, afraid that her eyes would betray the tears threatening to fall. When Amara reached out and flinged a strand of Miriam's hair, she finally stood. "You're pathetic," Amara added with a laugh, stepping aside to let her pass. Miriam walked away, her heart heavy and her steps slow. She kept her head high, determined not to let them see her break, but inside she felt like she was crumbling. As she stepped onto the gym floor, the stink of Amara's words lingered in her mind. Yet beneath the pain, a flicker of resolve began to grow. She had endured worse before, and she wasn't about to let Amara or anyone else define her. Miriam didn't know how, but she promised herself she would find a way to stand tall, no matter how hard they tried to push her down. In the midst of the torment, one person noticed Miriam's struggles. Ethan, a quiet boy who had often kept himself. He had seen Amara's antics and couldn't stand by any longer. During lunch, he approached Miriam, who was sitting alone under a tree. "Hey," he said, offering a shy smile. "Mind if I sit here?" Miriam looked up, surprised. "Sure." Ethan sat down, placing his tray beside hers. "Don't let Amara get to you. She's all bark and no bite." Miriam smiled faintly. "Easier said than done." "I know," Ethan admitted, "but you're stronger than you think." His words gave Miriam a glimmer of hope. For the first time since arriving at Wales High School, she felt like she wasn't completely alone. Amara's bullying had reached its cruelest point during a school assembly. As the students gathered in the auditorium, buzzing with anticipation, Amara and her friends huddled in the back, whispering and laughing. They had devised a wicked plan to humiliate Miriam, the new girl, in front of the entire school. When it was Miriam's turn to step onto the stage to receive a certificate for academic excellence, Amara positioned herself carefully, her eyes gleaming with malicious intent. As Miriam made her way towards the stage, Amara waited, biding her time. Just as Miriam approached the podium, Amara reached out and tripped her with a swift, calculated movement. Miriam stumbled, her papers scattering across the floor. The sound of her textbooks hitting the stage echoing in silent auditorium. But before she could gather herself, the laughter began. Laughter erupted through the crowd like a wave, echoing off the walls of Wales High School auditorium. Amara and her friends laughed louder than anyone, enjoying the sight of Miriam on the ground, her face flushing with humiliation. Tears burned in Miriam's eyes as she knelt on the stage, struggling to collect her papers. Her hands trembled as she tried to salvage the scattered notes, her vision blurred by the stink of the laughter surrounding her. The auditorium, usually a place of celebration, felt like a pit of darkness. From the stage, Mr. Okwa watched the scene unfold, his face pale, his jaw tightening. He didn't need to be told who the victim was. He had recognized his daughter the moment she stumbled. His heart ached as he saw Miriam, the girl he had so desperately wanted to protect from the cruelty of high school life, now exposed to public humiliation he had always feared. Mr. Ukwa had made a conscious effort to stay out of his daughter's school life, believing it would help her blend to experience a normal life, but this was too much. He grabbed the edge of the stage, his knuckles white. How had it come to this? How had this attempt to shield her only placed her in the line of fire? Amara noticed Mr. Ukwa's reaction from the back of the auditorium. A triumphant smirk appeared on her face as she leaned towards her friend. "Looks like the principal's watching," she whispered, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Let's give him a show." Mr. Ukwa barely heard the whispers. His mind was consumed by thought of his daughter, the pain he could see reflected in her eyes. He had been so careful not to let his role as principal overshadow her life, but now he wished he had done more. As the laughter continued, the Ukwa forced himself to look away from the stage. He couldn't stand to watch any longer. His daughter Miriam didn't deserve this. But what could he do? How could he protect her without making things worse? For the first time, Mr. Ukwa felt the weight of his authority pressing down on him. In that moment of helplessness, all he could do was hope that Miriam would find the strength to rise from the humiliation and face the school, face Amara without breaking. He could only hope that she would know, even if he could fix this, that she wasn't truly alone. Meanwhile, Amara had been in the bad record of the school because of bullying. Amara had always been known for her sharp tongue and relentless teasing at Wales High School. Many students feared her, and she thrived on the power that came with being the center of attention. One of her favorite targets was Anna. Anna, a quiet and reserved student, rarely spoke up, but that only made her an easier target for Amara's cruel remarks and relentless taunts. One day, during lunch, the bullying took a dangerous turn. Amara had been particularly harsh, pushing Anna in frustration when Anna tried to defend herself. The fall left Anna with a twisted ankle and a bruise on her arm. It was clear to everyone that the incident wasn't just a harmless schoolyard squabble. The school authority was furious with Amara. The principal invited Amara and her parents to school the following day. The atmosphere was tense as Amara sat between her mother and father, feeling the weight of the situation. The principal expressed his disappointment, highlighting the seriousness of Amara's action and the potential consequences. "We cannot tolerate such behavior at Wales High School," the principal said firmly. "This was not just bullying, it was an injury caused by your daughter's action. We are responsible for ensuring a safe environment for all students." Amara's parents, visibly embarrassed, listened as the principal explained the agreement they were about to make. Both Amara and her parents were asked to sign a formal undertaking for good conduct. The agreement was clear. If Amara was found to have bullied anyone again and it came to the school's attention, she would be expelled. Amara stared at the paper in front of her, feeling a mix of fear and disbelief. Her parents signed without hesitation, hoping that this would be a turning point for their daughter. As they walked out of the principal's office, Amara's parents spoke softly to her, emphasizing how serious the consequences could be if she ever crossed the line again. The once arrogant girl was now filled with doubt, knowing that one wrong move could change her future forever. From that day forward, Amara tried to stay out of trouble. The memory of Hannah's bruised face haunted her, and the weight of the signed agreement remained in the back of her mind. A few months after the incident with Anna, Amara had managed to stay out of trouble, driven by fear of expulsion and the threat of her parents' disappointment. The signed agreement kept her in check for a while, But as time went on, the stains of the punishment faded, and so did the memory of Anna's injury. It wasn't long before Amara found herself slipping back into her old habits. The thrill of being admired, the attention she craved, became too tempting once more. She began targeting students again, making harsh comments, spreading rumors, and pushing boundaries. It wasn't as intense as before, but the familiar taunts and belittling remarks crept back into her daily routine. The next day, after Amara had made Miriam to trip and fall, Mr. Okwa called an emergency assembly. The students murmured among themselves, curious about the sudden announcement. "Good morning, students," Mr. Okwa began, his voice firm. "Have noticed a concerning pattern of behavior in this school: bullying." His gaze swept over the crowd, lingering briefly on Amara. "Let me remind you that this school does not tolerate such actions, and today I want to share something personal." The room felt silent. "You all know Miriam, the new student. What you don't know is that she is my daughter." Gasps echoed through the auditorium. Amara's face turned pale. Mr. Chima continued, "Mariam wanted to experience school like any other student without special treatment. Unfortunately, some of you have made that experience difficult. Bullying is not a reflection of strength, it's a reflection of insecurity." Amara shifted uncomfortably in her seat, avoiding Mr. Okwa's piercing gaze. At the end of the meeting, Amara was asked to come to school the following day with her parents. As Amara's parents came the following day to see principal, inside the principal's office, the principal wasted no time. "Amara, we've already discussed this. The signed undertaking made it clear that if you bullied anyone again, the result will be expulsion. Do you have anything to say?" Amara opened her mouth, but the words wouldn't come out. She tried to feign innocence, but Mr. Okwa wasn't having it. Amara's parents, sitting in silence, could hardly believe what they were hearing. Their disappointment was evident. "I didn't mean to hurt her," Amara protested, tears welling up in her eyes. But the principal was firm. "Your action caused harm, Amara, and this cannot be tolerated. You are expelled," the principal said. Amara's parents pleaded for mercy, their voices breaking. They asked the principal to give their daughter another chance. "Please, she's still young," her mother said, her voice trembling. "One more chance and we will make sure she understands." After a long pause, the principal sighed and made his final decision. "Amara, you are no longer expelled, but you will be suspended for 2 weeks. When you resume, you will go for counseling sessions for 1 month in order to address your behavior. This will be your last chance. If I see any more incidents like this, you will be expelled. Do you understand?" Amara nodded, tears streaming down her face. She knew this was her final warning. As she walked out of the principal's office, the weight of her actions hit her harder than ever before. The look of disappointment in her parents' eyes burned in her memory. It wasn't just about the punishment, it was about the lives she had hurt and the trust she had lost. 2 weeks of suspension gave Amara time to reflect. When she returned, she, the once carefree girl, was determined to make things right, to change not just her actions, but who she had become. After Amara served her 2-week suspension, she was humbled by the experience. She started treating others with kindness. Miriam found a place, surrounded by friends who valued her for who she was. On Amara's first day of resumption, she found Mariam in the library. "Mariam," she began hesitantly, "I'm sorry for the way I treated you. It was wrong, and I hope you can forgive me." Mariam looked at her, surprised. "I'll take time," she said honestly, "but I appreciate your apology." As for Ethan, his quiet support blossomed into a close friendship with Mariam. Together, they proved that standing up against cruelty could make all the difference. And so, Wills High School learned an important lesson. You never truly know someone's story, and kindness costs nothing but means everything. This story explores themes of resilience, accountability, and the power of kindness, bringing the characters full circle in a satisfying resolution. Thank you for watching. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more stories. Bye.